Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Coach's Corner. I'm Jeffrey David Hartford, your host and the coach. That's the conduit of optimism, altruism, consciousness, and health. And today I have with me a guest that's going to bring you all sorts of valuable information. The founder of Japa Health, Japa Hot Yoga, businesswoman and empowering woman across the board, Sheryl Utal. Sheryl, thank you so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here. It's going to
Yeah,
be
this is
good.
going to be, it sure is. You know, audience,
Yeah.
we just chatted for a few minutes before hitting record, and I can already tell this is going to go some places that I hadn't even planned for, and I'm really excited for it. I'll tell you, Sheryl, I'll throw to you in a moment, but this experience you and I are going to share right now, I really feel is going to go much more down the spirituality side than maybe many people are used to. I think that's something we instantly click on and resonate with. But a lot of it stems from both of us. Our similarity is our own health journey. What brought us into the health, wellness, fitness space, into the quantum space, and what our catalyst was. So I understand your background was you got sick yourself, you had to work your way through it, rooted in some trauma in childhood, like most of us, right? And many of us become that one that really heals our bloodline. And
hmm
when I heard that, it hit me so deep because I just knew I was the one that wasn't going to just fall in line and stay within the status quo. I had to resist. There's some rebellious nature there, but it's
Hmm.
not rebellious to be rebellious. It's rebellious to get to the truth. And I sense
Yeah.
that with you as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's about not settling, you know? For me, it's about not settling. And something in me always felt like there was something better. There was an experience to be had that was more delicious, that was more abundant, that was more energetic. Like there was more aliveness to be experienced than what I was experiencing. And I can't say necessarily where that desire came from other than my soul, right? My soul aching for it and saying like, there is more than this in this life, and just relentlessly not settling for anything other than that has basically been the last 20 years of my life.
It's amazing. Have you traced it back? I have not yet, but have you traced it back to discovering what the catalyst was for you? What really got you to truly awaken, if you will?
Oh my God. Yes. I mean, it's multi-layered, but I was at war with myself. I was at war with myself. And I was actually just talking to Lena, who's my co-founder in Joppa Health, about it this week. And, I've dropped hints about my story and talked about sort of the concepts and how I was at war with myself, but I haven't actually told like the ugly, like nitty gritty, deep down and dirty story. So I'll tell you. So you'll be like the first to hear it, or everybody listening to this will be the first to hear it publicly. But I felt like I wanted to change myself. I didn't know why. And it was this sort of deep subconscious feeling like I wasn't going to be who I wanted to be or achieve a sense of happiness the way that I was. And I think a lot of that stemmed from childhood ridicule, from my family, right? From being basically picked on and torn apart, and there's tons of Instagram pages and all kinds of content around there about narcissistic parents and, childhood abuse and all kinds of things. So I think this is a really common experience that people have that manifests into some amount of either body dysmorphia or self-loathing. Women I know, like probably every woman I know has experienced some amount of either body dysmorphia or body shame or not feeling comfortable in their own skin. And I went through that. And I went through that in a way that it wasn't because I thought I was fat or ugly or anything like that. It was just a not feeling good about myself, like a fundamental undercurrent of I am not enough and I have to change something about myself. I can't be who I really am. Right. And I was unconscious, of course, to all of this. Like this was way before my spiritual awakening. This is what led to the awakening. Right. And so out of my desire to try to figure out how to like myself, change myself, adapt in a way that was going to somehow make me feel like, okay, now I'm finally enough, came plastic surgery. And this plastic surgery turned out horribly. And, I can say plastic surgery in general is bad, but I don't actually think that that's true, even though I had a horrific experience. Like like an absolutely disastrous experience, I can say like for some people that have a really good outcome, it could be a beautiful thing for them in their life. They can develop confidence and, feel good in their skin and enjoy their life and, enjoy their new shape, whatever that may be. But in my case, it was like a wicked souls lesson that was like, you thought you didn't like yourself before? Now you're going to learn that you're actually perfect the way that you are because I'm going to make it worse. And so a like really big lesson that I wish I could just implant into people, which I know I can't, and I know I can't do that work for them, is that if you hate yourself and you wish something about yourself to be different, and then something terrible happens to you, all you would want would be to be back the way that you were. And there's no way to express how much gratitude you can have for your authentic self, the way that you are right now, the way that God made you, lumpy, bumpy, whatever size, whatever shape, whatever you look like, whatever your avatar is that you've been gifted, this vessel that you have that is so fucking amazing. If you only knew how perfect it was, and if you could stop fighting with it, everything in your life would change.
God
And
bless.
I think that low key, there's very few people, there's probably exceptions, but low key, everybody experiences this on some level, right? Like everybody has experiences where they see a photo of themselves, or they look at themselves in the mirror, or they're in a yoga class and there's a mirror in front of them, or they see a recording of themselves. I mean, this is why filters are so popular, right? Is because nobody wants to see the truth of who they are because it's painful. This is part of the human condition. But the long answer to your question is, yeah, I had to learn the hard way. I had to learn the hard way that not loving myself leads to really bad things. Not accepting myself leads to really bad things. And that was, a giant punch in the mouth
Yeah.
that I then had to deal with and accept and, learn to integrate and then also forgive myself for because like this wasn't like a bad accident that I got in. This was a choice that I made. This was a choice that came from a very insecure place, a very disempowered place. And I can look back on that version of myself from 20 plus years ago now and have compassion for that young woman that didn't know who she was, but I see it all around us. And I think that this is a point of manipulation for like all of consumerism.
Yes. Yep.
It's the fear of being judged, not being liked, not being able to be comfortable in your skin. And yeah, that's the wake up call. That was the wake up call for me. And from that moment forward, it became this unbelievable, I'm going to use the word effort to make peace.
Yeah. That's beautiful. It's interesting. There's so many of us that have, our own slight shift from the story there, but that story you just told is so similar for so many of us in this space that we're truly actively shifting from this state of disempowerment into the state of empowerment. And it took our own journey. It took our own internal battle that was all rooted, like you said, consumerism for sure, and this disempowerment paradigm that makes us feel like we need to seek our answers externally. We need external
That's exactly right.
validation, right? We need this facade to
Yeah.
look a certain way to be good
Yeah.
enough, and all of that's total bullshit. The
It's total
answers are
bullshit.
within. Yeah,
Yeah, I
you're
didn't know
spot
that I
on.
could change my inner world. I had no grid for that. Like literally had zero grid for the idea that the feeling that I had and the experience that I had could be shifted internally. Like what?
Yes.
Yeah, there was no awareness for that. And that's why I became a teacher of this, this lifestyle. That's why what worked for me is what I share with the world because not only did it work for me, but this is like time tested stuff. Like this is like, we're talking about ancient wisdom that has just been, forgotten and or dismissed and diminished and ridiculed because of its power, of course. So, I didn't make it up. I can't take credit for it, but I can only say for certain that when you do the work, it works.
Yeah. Could not agree more. And it's amazing. What goes through my mind as you're telling all that, I think I've watched your episode with Dr. Cruz 4 or 5 times now. I'm in the middle of
Really?
it again. He says so many things to you. You connected with him on a level that I don't think I've seen anybody else connect with him. And it's
Mm.
interesting. He's unique in his approach with everybody he talks to, and he's deliberately trying to shake people awake. And he was even tough on you in a couple of the spots that made me a little uncomfortable. I'm like, come on, man, give her some more credit. But I get where he's coming from, and I can appreciate what he's trying to say. But he talks so much about this distinction, and I know there's a direct connection here for you and your family with your dad and such. But what we're using right now, this technology, has some incredible powers for good, but it has been
Yeah, oh, yeah.
overwhelmingly used for bad. It is programming people. It is the same technology they use to program people within the casinos to get us
Hmm.
addicted to the blue light and addicted to, let's get some, you know, heavy chested waitresses walking around serving drinks while you're sitting there pulling on the lever of this, machine that you're hoping for ding, 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 ding. And your dopamine reward system is getting hijacked and stolen. I truly believe we can use that same technology for good if we
Yeah.
continue to share these empowering stories. But hopefully, it only has to be a very temporary process so that we can then get back to what truly heals us, which is disconnecting from this shit and getting outside and getting back in touch with nature and letting the sun heal the body. So I could talk about that type of stuff forever.
It's discernment to know when to engage with it and when to not, when to disengage, right? And I think
Great
that
point.
that discernment can only come when you raise your consciousness and you have intention around what it is you're doing and why you're doing it, right? Thank you for listening to that podcast over and over again. I should listen to it again too, because he definitely shared a lot with me. But in his defense, he was hard on me a little bit a couple times, but in his defense, he knew nothing about me. We'd never talked before that. We jumped on and immediately started recording. So he didn't know who I was. He didn't know my background. That was our first time meeting. So I'm interested to talk to him again, and we will record again. I've already been in touch with Chantel, so we will do it again. I have ideas about what to talk about. But the reason why I asked him specifically what I asked him about consciousness is because of my experience of going from being unconscious to slowly, having these we call it spiritual awakening, right? But to realize that I had previously been asleep to certain things, right? To realize, oh, aha, those were blind spots for me. How come I never saw that before? Where was I this whole time? Right. And now you and other people that have either listened to that, or heard my story elsewhere know that a big part of my trauma was growing up with a father who was an addicted compulsive gambler. And then you can start to imagine how the environment that he was in and the consciousness that he was experiencing at the time was all rooted in scarcity. Like, think about like what a casino even is about. It's this bizarre idea that I don't have enough money, and if I take a risk with my money in this way, somehow magically more money is going to appear without creating any value, without creating any effort, right? It's like this totally sick, twisted trick that has no real truth in reality. Like, the house always wins.
Yeah.
The house
Or,
always wins,
or
right?
else it wouldn't exist.
Right. And so that energy of my father and my mother, who was always right by his side, which is very mentally ill, right? And is a very perverse perspective of reality of, I mean, if we're talking about abundance and like what is possible and what is higher attainment, their path to that was totally fucked up and insane, right? And so you have to imagine that that was imprinted onto me consciously and subconsciously, right? Both from the epigenetics of having been just their offspring, but then also being exposed to these behaviors that, I mean, every single night of my life. And I can't tell you how many times I was physically in a casino as a child. So it what became my life's mission for myself and then also as a teacher, once I came to understand that that decision that I made to change myself came out of a place of scarcity. It came out of a place of not enough. Like, there's something about me that's not enough. And that if I just change this thing about myself, then somehow I'm going to be enough. Right. Which is such a distorted view. But I knew no other path because that's all I was ever taught and exposed to
That's
was
great.
this, hyper materialism. So I have fallen in love with the idea of spirituality as the highest path out of necessity, because that path of scarcity, like I said, it leads to very bad things. But in particular, when you start to understand it from a biological perspective, which obviously you learned a little bit about from Uncle Jack on that podcast that I interviewed him on, as episode number 7, I think. And that actually creates traumatic brain injury, right? That level of stress, because scarcity is a stress. Scarcity is a signal that there's not enough in the environment, right? That it's like I can't survive. I literally can't survive. Right? There's not enough for me. There's not enough resources. There's not enough time. There's not enough food. And that creates on a chronic level brain damage, right? And then what happens downstream from that is like all these metabolic damages. It literally creates damage and molecular chaos at the level of the mitochondria in all of the systems of the body, right? Especially, our hormonal system, our immune system, our gut, our ability to digest food. I mean, when you go into survival mode or you're chronically in and stay in survival mode your whole life, that's not a healthy place to develop, resilience and capacity. And no wonder you're going to feel like shit and depleted all the time, and systems are going to start to fail.
That's right.
And when I started to connect those dots, and when I started to realize, because first I went down the path of facing my truth and just learning how to breathe through the discomfort of what did I do? How did I get here? And by the way, that was right at the same time that I was going through a horrific divorce from a very abusive guy. It was like, I thought I was a good person. I thought I was a smart girl. How did I get here? And so really learning to face my deepest truth and breathe through it and start to integrate and accept, I started feeling better, and it's like, as you start to make peace, suddenly you liberate all this baggage, this emotional baggage that you have. And it's heavy, right? This heavy energy. And when you look at things like the map of consciousness, and you start to understand that shame is the lowest frequency on the map of consciousness, right? And then, you look at it at each increment, and where the inflection point is between survival and living and thriving is courage,
Mm.
right? And so it took an immense amount of courage for me to actually face the shadows and the darkness and like the shame, and accept that, okay, I fucked up. I married that guy. I took that job. I hired that doctor, whatever it may be. I had to learn to forgive myself for what I didn't know before I learned it, and really have the courage to say, okay, I have a choice now, and I can decide to move forward and not be a victim. Because they did this to me. My dad was bad. My mom was bad. These people were bad, right? Realizing that like I was part of it, and I made those choices. I mean, yeah, they might have been subconscious,
Hmm.
fine, but I made them from a place of scarcity.
Yeah. That's really powerful. And that distinction, that ability to have the brutal honesty with yourself to say, okay, yeah, these things happened, and I was programmed to see them as though they happened to me, but I'm now
Right.
recognizing that I was responsible. I was the creator, and I
Yes.
accept that responsibility. And there's so much power in that. This current paradigm we're in strips people of that and tells them that this is not your fault. You're the victim. We will save you. We will fix you. We will take care of you, and that
Hmm.
strips any sense of power away. You know, people have a very difficult time saying, what you're telling me then is that I chose this
Yeah.
outcome for myself. And,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a distinction to be had there. Consciously, you did not. But
Correct.
subconsciously, the energy you put out into the field is what pulled this back to you. So,
Correct.
yes, in a literal sense, you did create this. And getting upset about that and resisting that isn't going to change it. That's actually going to continue to bring more bad to you. The moment you have that realization and holy shit, I am the creator and I don't want what I've been creating. Let me
That's
make a
right.
change. And
That's right.
Lord, that's the path I'm on too. As I said, the specific details, there's enough differences there, but just the general sense, you and I are on a very, very similar path. And I love
Hmm.
just having this type of a discussion, sharing this information, because I pray, even if it's just one person that hears this, that gets
Yeah.
woken up from it and says, holy shit, wait a minute. I've been doing the same thing. You mean I can
Yeah.
change those things and my life can be better? And the answer is unequivocally yes.
Unequivocally, yes. You can
Yeah,
completely change your frequency. And that's what it's about.
yes.
That's absolutely what it's about. And the way that I did it, and the way that I recommend other people do it, is number one, through the breath, right? Like if it doesn't start with breathing and conscious breathing, and then posture and embodiment and feeling into your heart, then you're doing it wrong. like full stop, right? Like you have to train your system to become coherent and send a signal of safety to your body. For me, that path was yoga. And, there's a reason why this is a tradition that's been around since like the beginning of, of humanity, right? It's like one of the oldest systems on the planet. It's as old as burying the dead. It's very old. Now, it has evolved in the West. Obviously, we do it a little differently, but it still is effective in its 8-step philosophical path, right? Like there's a reason why they wrote that blueprint of 8 steps to what they call samadhi or enlightenment, because it works, and they had insight into the human condition. Like these are not my story, like whatever, it has its own unique details, but the pattern is not unique at all. Like I'm just a regular girl that had to hit that dark, dark, dark spot in order to go, okay, time out. This isn't working. I'm sick, I'm broke, I'm miserable, I'm damaged. Like, this isn't working. And I have to figure out how I want to move forward. And there's other ways, there's martial art, there's other ways, right? There's just straight up meditation. I think meditation is very difficult for people because, especially in this day and age, the overstimulation that we experience makes it very difficult to go from like 1,000 miles an hour to slam on the brakes and slow down. So you need some kind of mechanism, strategy, toolkit in between. And to me, that's moving meditation, and I'll advocate for this all day long, whether that's walking, or some kind of deeper embodiment practice. I mean, for some people, it's ecstatic dance, right? For some people, it's self pleasure. I mean, we could talk about that too, because literally, like, that's the opposite of pain and suffering, right? There's a reason why it's called feed and breed
Yeah.
other than fight or flight.
Amen.
But yeah, I mean, it really started with, for me, yoga practice in the heat to control my senses so that I could have an embodied experience, quiet the analytical mind, slow my brain waves, and drop into my heart. And it wasn't until I was actually able to slow my brain waves. Like, I mean, if you're in a hyper vigilant analytical mind your entire life and you know no other state of consciousness, this is a difficult concept to even imagine. But there is another state that you can walk this earth in. It doesn't have to always be hyper vigilant. There is such a thing as peace, I promise. It might be elusive, but there is such a thing. And it is possible to slow your brain waves simply with your breath. I mean, there's so many other benefits that we could get into, but for me, a very challenging, physically difficult asana practice that required all of my presence and attention in order to perform, so that I stopped analytically thinking and judging and trying to solve, how am I going to solve this? How am I going to solve how I got here?
Yeah.
But, life isn't a problem to be solved. It's an experience to be had and felt and savored and like, tasted, right? And so until I was able to do that, I couldn't experience like that, the juice of, well, what is this here to teach me? And so things like sun salutations, moving with the breath, even just a good old long plank hold with your eyes on one point, right? Hold a deep squat, feel the burn and breathe. And don't fucking move. Don't move. Don't move. Don't let your mind take over. Like just hold that posture, accept the experience of the sensation that you're having. Use your breath to send a signal of safety in that moment that, hey, I chose this. I'm not going to die from it. I know it feels like a lot, but I can take another breath and I can stay calm even in this moment of intensity. And for me, doing that on the mat translated to being more resilient and more calm and to anchor in a sense of safety off the mat.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's very empowering. It's
It
like you
is.
said, there's other ways for sure, but I definitely see yoga as playing a vital role. And I often find those of us that find our path to healing, what healed us ends up being the thing that we put up on this pedestal. And there's something to
Of
that.
course.
For us, that's what it was. But I think it's important when we convey our story that we do acknowledge, hey, there's something else. You might find power in something else, but you're right. In the breath, in safety, in stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, getting out of
Yeah.
this fight or flight that we are just programmed into, and we now understand through this quantum space that the fight or flight is being stimulated by things like artificial light at night, by staring at the screen all night long after the sun sets, by elevating our cortisol when it should be suppressed and melatonin should be elevated, and we're just so incoherent, the body
So
can't
incoherent.
heal that.
Yeah.
Now, there's no such thing as thriving in that environment.
Mm,
We're lucky if we just survive. So that you're spot on. Get out of the survival mode. And on some level, because we've been so programmed by this disempowerment paradigm, there might be a point for many people that they do need some more information externally, but they still
yeah.
have the answers internally. There's an intuitive sense of knowing that if we can literally and figuratively unplug and go connect with nature and just start to give ourselves that information we need, disconnect from the non-native EMFs and connect to the Schumann resonance, the
Yes.
natural electromagnetic field that the body is supposed to be able to resonate with and be in coherence with. What I believe it's our alpha waves.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean that's just it, right? Is that the alpha brain waves, which are
Yeah.
associated with relaxation,
Yes.
right, are the same as the Schumann resonance. So go figure, right? So like when we're connected to the earth, we're naturally connected to that state of consciousness. So you can think about like, well, no wonder everybody's anxious, right? We're wearing rubber shoes, we're sleeping on raised mattresses, we're staying inside all the time, and we're never actually plugging in. And at Joppa Health, we have this assessment that scores 10 categories of health, and nature is one of them. And I have all the aggregated statistical data, and this is not a surprise to me, and it won't be a surprise to you, and probably not to people listening either, but I have all the data that on average, statistically speaking, connection with nature scores significantly lower than every other category,
Yeah. Yep.
and
It's
it's
interesting
not
too.
surprising.
There's an active resistance in many people because it's so far from what they've been programmed to believe that when you try to let them understand that connecting with nature is the root of this whole thing of healing, and that you've been on every diet out there, every exercise program out there, you've paid tens of thousands of dollars or more and been promised the world, and none of it worked because
Yeah,
Dr. Alexis Cowan on. I know you're affiliated with her through Joppa as well, and
yeah,
I've listened to your episode with her as well. Also, I saw you on her podcast as well, which was pretty cool. But this dynamic, she has her health pyramid, and in the
mm,
fitness industry, that health pyramid was inverted and incomplete. The fitness industry is exercise first and foremost, and then maybe we talk nutrition later if exercise isn't enough. But we don't get into the sleep and the light water magnetism. So we flip it and we go to the foundation of it is this quantum biology, foundation of light water magnetism, and understanding the simplest way of describing that is connecting with nature and disconnecting from tech as often as you can because we are in coherence with nature. That's what will heal us, right? And then we sleep better, and then we eat better, and then we
yeah.
exercise.
But you
It's
still
so
can't be at
vital.
war with yourself
Yes,
because you can
100%.
you can disconnect from technology all you want, but if you had traumatic experiences or some kind of ancestral trauma that programmed you to believe that you're unworthy,
Yes,
then there's only so far you can go with just simply unplugging from technology, right? Like reconnecting to nature is very important, which is why Alexis and I co-taught a series. We have it hosted on Joppa Health. It's called The Foundations of Health. And we
nice.
co-taught it. So she taught 3 lessons, I taught 3 lessons. And there's a reason why she teaches these foundational principles of quantum biology, and then I teach the foundational principles of coherence, fascia, breath, meditation in your brain waves, and heart intelligence. And
Yeah,
there's a reason why. It's like, because if you're disconnected from your heart and you don't ever feel love, there's no supplement for love, my friends.
yeah,
There
yeah,
really isn't. Just like there's no true supplement for the sun. I mean, you have everybody in the world trying to sell you some kind of red light device or this and that, whatever. And I'm sure there are benefits at times for some of them, especially if they're good, right? But we all know that like terrestrial sunlight is the main source, right? We,
yes.
we all know there is no true replacement for that. Just like there's no replacement for love.
Amen. I totally get it. And you're 100% right too. You need to be in a place of alignment and coherence internally. You need to feel self-love, self-compassion to truly heal. You try to follow any protocol out there and it's rooted in some form of self-hatred, it's not going to work for you.
Yeah,
And yet if you just focus on the self-love and self-compassion, that alone can lead to the placebo effect in your body healing through your mind,
1000%. Yeah,
right? I'm so
yeah,
with you there. And I think for me, the getting connected with nature really, it almost took my healing journey, and I guess I'll say it this way, from the being rooted in the fitness industry, it put it on steroids. I
Hmm.
started, there was a lot of breath work, there was a lot of meditative practices, and it was just rooted in this science geek in me saying, hey, listen, I know I'm supposed to stimulate my parasympathetic and I don't enough, so I need to start to do this stuff more. And I started to feel better, and I went from doing it for 5 minutes to saying, well, five was great, but I want to feel even better. Let me do it for 20. Let me do it for longer. So I did a lot of that indoors in technology under artificial light, and it was still really effective. But when I then was able to take that and get outside and meditate outside, or like you say,
Yeah.
doing a moving meditation, go walk and do so barefoot in the earth, holy
Yeah.
smokes, it takes it to a whole nother level. And now, I want to get back to your journey and your diagnoses and what really pushed you into this healing side too. But I'll share with you briefly, as I did before we hit record. My audience already knows, so we don't have to go too deep. But I was diagnosed with a tumor on my left kidney a little over a year ago. And the moment I was diagnosed, I had a palpable rush of energy through my body of pure peace and calm. I knew I was going to be all right. And I knew this was a gift to me so I could lead by example and show people what the human body is capable of, how it can heal. Because I knew this diagnosis is actually for a version of me that's already dead. The lifestyle that I used to
Mm,
lead, the emotions that I used to carry around and, bury who my authentic self was. I was absolutely, as you said, I was at war with myself in my
yeah.
youth. And it took a long time to overcome that, but I'm on the other side of it. So I didn't get angry and say, but I've done all this work. Why am I getting this diagnosis now? I got so excited. I said, whoa, here's the gift. I get to show people the
Wow.
diagnosis is not mine. The tumor doesn't exist. It doesn't belong here. And I'm doing the work. I started the work years ago that has already moved me in the direction of healing. And that timeline is in the not so distant future. So I have a sense that you have a very similar journey in yours, and I know yours was Hashimoto's, but if you can tell us, did your yoga practice start before your diagnosis or was it after? And what was the timeline like with the diagnosis to healing?
Yeah, I'm happy to share all of that. But I just first have to say that's a really impressive, mature, emotionally mature response to that experience you had. Very few people can respond in a way like, oh, this must be a gift. And I do try to tell people that, that's like this experience that you're having that feels like suffering is an actual gift from your soul, right? This is an initiation. This is an opportunity to look at life from a different perspective, right? And it's difficult for people to do that when they're in pain or where they're in fear, it's really, really hard. Like, okay, wait, like you're telling me that this fucked up thing is good? Like, how is that? So it's usually the benefit of hindsight that we have that we're able to see this was actually a blessing in disguise. That was my experience. Like I didn't have the this is a gift experience right in the beginning. So for me, I had been ill as long as I can remember, but was gaslit and told that it was this or that, or it was in my head. I mean, I literally had a doctor once put his hand on my shoulder and say that he was going to write me a referral to psychiatry because, this is psychosomatic. And that was, a very common thing. It still happens, unfortunately, especially to women. They're their little girl, Um, so the first time I remember ever like really expressing issues in my life, I was about 14 years old, and my mom's brother is a retired now pediatric cardiologist. And, my mom had four kids. I'm the oldest. And whenever there was anything at all, she'd always just call her brother. And as we all know, pediatricians are like the most indoctrinated allopathic doctors out there. They do the most harm. And so he fell into that category of just this pill for this and this vaccine for this and all that. And so I was at a family gathering. I remember this, and I don't have very many childhood memories because of all the trauma, but there's a few here and there that I do remember. And it was a 4th of July party at his house, at Uncle Jesse's house. And I remember alone with him in the kitchen, I like kind of cornered him and I was embarrassed to tell him that I was constipated. But I remember telling him that I was like severely constipated. And he pulled me aside and showed me a box of cereal and was like, well, when, you eat cereal and things, just read the box and you want to look for fiber and just make sure you're getting enough fiber. So, of course, that didn't work. But that's like the first memory that I have of feeling like desperate, of like, I need help. Like things aren't working right. Because I had pretty severe GI issues my whole life. I remember another memory that I had is I was always teased because I was called lazy because I could barely get up in the morning. I mean, I was pretty much non-functional. And so I was always teased for being lazy, even though I was a really like high performing kid. I had straight A's, all that stuff. I played sports, but I struggled a lot. And so I always remember being teased and, being like ridiculed in the morning. Like my dad would come in my room, and one time he had a camera flash and he was like flashing it in my face and laughing. Cheryl's the lazy one. I know, right? It's terrible. I'm over it now, but I just remember these things sprinkled throughout my childhood and my teenage years of always struggling, always being unwell. I made the soccer team in high school, which was a winter sport. And at this time I was probably 15 or 16 years old, and all the other girls are playing. They're all out there. They're in their shorts. I lived in Las Vegas at the time, and we know why.
Mhm.
And, there's winter there, but it wasn't like there was snow on the ground. I mean, I don't know what the temperature was, but there I was bundled up on the bench, blue hands, blue feet, just absolutely like I couldn't function. And, nobody thought anything of it, you know?
Wow.
And so there's all these little memories that I had throughout my life of, severe stomach aches and severe strep throat infections and, just issues that stand out. As far as I can recall, I was always unwell. And then my mother insisted, out of fear, that I go on birth control at 16 years old. I was a virgin, and she just demanded it. So that was another insult. And then I started having chronic bladder infections, like very severe bladder infections. And they just kept putting me on antibiotics, antibiotics, antibiotics. And then finally, a urologist went in and looked back at all the urinalysis tests and said, actually, like none of these came up positive for infection. So they had been putting me on, different antibiotics. And that was ongoing. That was like all throughout college. And I got married at the age of 23 to a derivatives trader who I thought was like very glamorous, but basically like a carbon copy of my dad, right? This
Mhm.
is like, here we go. He's trading futures and options and, calls and puts, and
Yeah.
so classic, so cliche.
Hmm.
Thank
So you're
God I woke
programmed
up.
for it.
Thank God I woke up. Yeah,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, but that's all I knew. So I'm still in chaos. I'm still dealing with somebody who's an addict, who's unstable. I'm still very unwell. And then I finally went off birth control at the age of 25, thinking, okay, I'm married, I have a house, I have a good job, he has a good job. That's what you do, right? So like I was checking off boxes in my life. I wasn't really in control, conscious control of what I wanted to create at all. I was just following the path of like, well, this is what I'm told makes a good life. So I'm just going to follow the status quo, I guess. So we lived in the suburbs, and I went off birth control and my period never came. And so then, of course, I went to the doctor, and it actually took them a while to figure it out. They didn't understand why. I had ultrasounds and things like that. And they said, okay, well, your uterus is normal, your ovaries are normal. And they finally did blood work, and my autoantibody levels for my Hashimoto's were like 15,000, which is just like extreme. Like when I told Kelsey that, she gasped. She was like, what? And, Kelsey's an endocrinologist. I think probably your audience knows who she is. And yeah, it was rough. I was sick. I was really sick. But like we've talked about, it was part of what I needed to experience in order to have the breakthroughs that I needed to have. So for the first like 2 years, maybe year and a half, I took the Synthroid, which is synthetic thyroid hormone replacement, which is one of, and sometimes is, the most commonly prescribed drug in the United States. This is really interesting. 80 million prescriptions a year, 18 million people a year take this drug, which is a complete psyop, like an absolute, like you don't, heal your issues, right? Because they manifest in different ways. But why you have an inadequate amount of thyroid in your body is not because you have a deficiency of this pharmaceutical compound, right? Like that's not why. That's never going to fix you. That's never going to heal you. That's never going to create, optimal functioning of your endocrine system and really your brain, right? Like your brain, which is what, Jack was explaining on the podcast that I did with him, because you have the hypothalamus pituitary thyroid axis. And if that axis isn't functioning because you're not getting the light in your eyes in the morning, then you're never going to make the right hormones. You're never going to have that right signal to produce the right thyroid hormone. And the story, of course, is deeper than that. But for me, like, the mechanics of how you heal your thyroid is a little deeper than that. But I mean, at a fundamental level, if you're super stressed out, you're going to make more cortisol than you are sex hormones. That's going to have feed forward like problems downstream. And then if you're not getting the right light signals, then you're not going to get that signal from your brain to your thyroid that it's, time to wake up and it's time to function. And then if you're in scarcity, right, there's this intelligence in your body because your thyroid is a big part of your metabolic engine that says, hey, 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 there's not enough food in the environment. Slow things down. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second, right? So the belief that there is abundance has a subtle effect on our body's ability to metabolize because we do anticipate and expect that there's more food coming, there's more resources coming. But I didn't learn all that for quite a long time because I just, I took their drugs for a couple years and I continued to get worse. And, my hair was falling out really bad. My skin was dry. I was constipated. I had brain fog. I woke up feeling terrible every day. I would basically, have 2 cups of coffee just to make it to work, would work all day in an LED lit office in front of a computer. And then I would come home, I would like take my clothes off and get in bed and go to sleep. Like I like had no life. I was non-functioning and I was miserable. And I remember vividly being at a Christmas party, a work party, and going into the bathroom and seeing my reflection. And I know that this is a thing that happens for a lot of people is that you get sick and tired enough when it comes down to vanity. Like you can suffer through a lot, but when you don't look good, that's pretty motivating. And I remember looking in the mirror and being like, oh boy, this cannot be my life. I'm way too young for this to be my life. I can't live the rest of my life like this. And I immediately went and started doing research and I became very curious. And it was like this spark set off in me about, okay, well, how did I get this? What is this? How does this work? Because I never asked any questions before that. I never really asked because they tell you actually, well, we don't know why you get this.
Yes.
And you're going to have it for life and you have to take this medication forever. And you might need your thyroid removed and you're probably going to get cancer, right? So because they tell you that story and we're conditioned to believe that the doctors are the highest authority, I believed that story.
Yep.
I had no reason otherwise, especially considering my whole life. Oh, Uncle Jesse had all the answers, right? Uncle Jesse had all the answers. So anyway, that was really the beginning of the journey of asking questions and opening my mind to the possibility that there was another way. And then I've told this story on podcasts before too, that there was this like little magazine, this like little neighborhood magazine that would get dropped on my driveway in the suburbs. I lived in San Clemente at the time in Southern California in Orange County. And I would go home for lunch and I would always throw it away. Like I would pull in my driveway, see the thing on the driveway and just throw it away. And I was at this point in my life where I was like, okay, things need to change. And so in that moment, this is when curiosity came into my life, right? When I started asking questions about the chronic illness, I started asking questions about why did I get this? I started asking questions about, is there a way to heal? So I one day out of curiosity opened that little magazine thing that was on my driveway and there was a little ad in it for a yoga studio in my neighborhood and it was for $10. It was like a little promo for $10 and I was like, what's that about? And that was the beginning of that.
I love it. That's
And I
awesome. It's such
went.
a simple thing.
Yeah, and I went and immediately, well, first of all, having the history of Hashimoto's, you're cold. Right? Remember the story about like being the little girl that like couldn't participate in the soccer game. So I had always been cold. I don't think in my entire life I ever broke a sweat, which is why I'm sweaty out here and I just love it. I never complain about being sweaty, but I didn't know what that was like. I'd never experienced that. So can you imagine like never having those detox pathways activated in your entire life? So you're already sick. And then on top of that, you're not eliminating in that way.
Yeah.
So I went to this infrared heated yoga studio and I took a yoga class and I stretched and I was breathing and then Shavasana came. And I remember being like, holy shit, how come people don't talk about this? Like, that was the most amazing thing I've ever done. And I was just hooked. from that moment on. That was in like 2006, late 2005, 2006.
That's awesome. I love
Yeah,
it. I truly believe a large part of our healing journey starts with the level of brutal honesty we've got with ourselves and the level of vulnerability that it just took for you to share all that. And I'm grateful for you sharing it. You know, I know it's already served you doing this type of work, but what that can do for other people as we share with a level of vulnerability and saying, hey, listen, this is where I was, this is who I was, this is what I believed at the time because that's what I was programmed to believe. It isn't what I necessarily consciously believe, but we aren't raised to consciously think anything for ourselves. We're told to sit
no,
down, shut up, you're not smart enough, listen to the authority figure, listen to the expert, regurgitate back to them what they said, and show that you can be a good little boy and good little girl. And then, like
yeah,
you said, with the doctors, they're using whether they're consciously aware of it or not. And I believe most doctors are not consciously aware of it either. They're programmed
yeah,
into the system, right? I think a lot
yeah, I
of the
agree.
doctors that get into this system, their heart's in the right place. They want to
Yeah,
help.
there have
Your
been some,
uncle, for example, your uncle
yeah,
was
there,
trying to do
yeah,
everything he knew, everything he had been trained to do to give you the tools to help you out, but he's at the mercy of poor information. That, I mean, that whole system, again, it's rooted in low vibrational frequencies, fear, worry, anxiety, depression. And then you're told, as we alluded to before, it's not your fault. You're a victim. These things happened to you. We'll take care of you. But to me, when we share these stories and we give all these details, there's so many people that will begin to relate and hear it and say, wait a minute, really? Because let's be honest, the average person in our society right now would look at you or look at myself, because I've heard this from people. Their perception of who I am and what I have going on is, well, you can't relate because you're healthy, you're fit, you're the epitome of health. Well, let's have a conversation. Let me tell
yeah,
you my story if you really want help and you really want to change. But that's the way we're programmed, that you look like the picture of health, that nobody would look at you and think that you've been through what you've been through. But
no, they wouldn't.
that's the exciting part that I have, this empowerment paradigm shift, I guess I'll say, right? That we share our story, we explain that, like you said, it's not a deficiency of this pharmaceutical drug that caused your issue. It's more so a deficiency of the sun, of nature, and of all these other things. And to your
Of
point
love,
too, of self-love, self-compassion, this balance of the autonomic nervous system, sympathetic when it needs to be turned on so that we can overcome and heal, deal with the situation, and then shut it off and have
right,
that kind of refractory period, nice and short and sweet, fight, flight, freeze, handle it, and then recover back into parasympathetic. But the average person
yeah,
has no clue what it feels like to be in a state of parasympathetic nervous system.
mm-mm.
With the breath work, with the yoga, with everything you alluded to, that's the path. You're giving
Well,
me chills telling the story.
we're in this really difficult cycle now because it's not an overnight fix.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I can share this story now, that I'm way more than a decade on the other side of it. And like, by the way, doesn't mean it's easy for me to be vulnerable and share that these things were part of my story, because there's still threads of shame. There's still threads of it. Like nobody likes saying, oh, here's all the skeletons in my closet. That's not necessarily our favorite thing to do. Like you said, I think that it is really empowering and inspiring for other people to say, like, okay, I'm not alone, right? And if they can do it, if they can overcome these things and they can dig up their shadows and make friends with their shadows and learn to love themselves anyway, that maybe I can too, right? Maybe there's hope. But I want to be really clear, like, it's not a fast or easy process. And I think that's the challenge, that because we're in this paradigm of these quick dopamine hits, the constant blue light in our face, and everybody is already conditioned for this instant gratification and they want more, 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 more of it. It becomes increasingly more difficult for people to commit to the long game, for people to commit to like actually put in the work and say, okay, this is my life. And if I don't start now, then where am I going to be in 6 months or in 6 years, right? Because people will come to me and say, like, okay, Cheryl, like, I want to learn how to handstand. Like, how long do you think it'll take? And my answer is, why do you care?
Yeah, yeah,
Do you want to do a handstand or do you not want to do a handstand?
I love
Like,
it.
why do you care? And so it's like, do you want to be in your power? Do you want to break up with the old ways, the old system, the old paradigm? Do you want to be part of, what we would maybe call the new earth, right? Like, do you want to be the cycle breaker, right? Like, do you want to be a leader at all in your life? Like, or do you just want to be a follower, you know? And it's really, I think, comes down to those values. And if that's what you want, then you commit and you stay in the game and you realize that it's not linear. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. You may fall back into old patterns and old traps. You may get totally, completely dysregulated and triggered and a mess, but you stay committed and you keep showing up. And that even though it's not linear, right, it does go like this. It
Yeah,
does go like this. And over time, you'll wake up and realize that that old version of you died.
that's right.
That old version of you died.
That's my story for sure. So much of it is rooted in knowledge and this whole premise of ignorance is bliss. I've pushed on back on that since I was a little boy. I said, and now I understand clearly ignorance is the root cause of all of our problems. If you
Uh-huh.
don't know enough to know what you really need to do, you just know what you were told to do and it's not serving you, you then stand in place in a state of fear saying, well, I don't know what to do then, I don't know who to go to. And that's the thing, we always look external, we look outside. We need to learn to trust ourselves and turn and look in. And, calling back to the conversation you had with Uncle Jack again, where he got talking about the whole dynamic of vasopressin and you guys were talking about Becker's work. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that was the prime reason that I've watched it over and over and over, trying to
Yeah.
really understand that piece of, hold on, our melanin, if it's properly hydrated, can actually cause the charge, that 1 trillionth of an ampere that we need to de-differentiate these red blood cells into a
Mm-hmm.
pluripotent stem cell, which can
Mm-hmm.
replace any damaged cell in the body, which means the human body can heal itself from fucking anything if we give it the right stimulus. But that impact of the vasopressin being that the sun shuts it off and the blue light turns it on, and that's dehydrating
But so does
the
chronic stress.
100%, 100%. But for me, I was getting like, I felt a fire burning up in me as he was telling that. I'm like, hold on. I've listened to hundreds of hours of his work, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
certain he said it before, but I
Yeah.
wasn't ready to hear it. And I heard it
Yeah.
then. I'm
Yeah.
like, I need to listen again and keep understanding this because the more I can understand this is interesting. I see this in you as well. I've been so passionate about so many of these things since I was a little boy that as soon as something passed my test, I then was in, I'm giving it my all, and everybody that's going to see me is going to hear about it because I want them to benefit from it as well. But I was more passionate than I was educated. So I'd try to shove it down their throat, not realizing that, well, I can't change for them. I can't do the work for them,
Yeah.
but I just wanted so badly to help. And it would resist, people would push me away, and I took it personally. So a part of
Mm-hmm.
my healing journey was overcoming that and realizing, oh, wait a minute, they're pushing me away because I'm shoving something down their throat that they don't want, and I'm not able to do it. I wasn't informed enough. So I need to continue to understand better and better and better and explain it in a way that my 6-year-old son could understand it,
Yeah.
and deliver it in a way that somebody, their guard doesn't go up. They're not in another heightened sympathetic state. They're calm. They're safe. They know that I'm sharing with them information that has benefited me, and I just want to help them. There's such a difference in that delivery. And you said you'll have Uncle Jack back on again. I look forward to the day that I have him on as well. I wanted it about a year ago, or so I thought I did. I'm glad it didn't happen yet because I
Great, because you
wasn't
weren't
ready then.
ready. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
when
get
I
that.
get him on now, it's going to be, I'm so excited for it. Yeah.
Mm.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
sorry.
interesting because he'll go exactly where you want him to go, but it won't happen the way you think it's going to happen.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I hear you. And that's why Becker's work was canceled, right? There's a reason why, the story about Robert O. Becker and the work that he wrote about the body electric and that he went on 60 Minutes and he blew the whistle on EMFs and why that whole story has been demonized in the public is because if we knew exactly how powerful we are, if we knew we had the capacity to heal ourselves, if we knew that through conscious intent and the biology of belief, right, that we could in fact regenerate, if we knew that all we had to do was reconnect to nature and shift our consciousness, that we wouldn't need their products anymore. But you're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar industry that's yoked to the corruption of the Federal Reserve and, every other part of our modern civilization that enslaves us. Like we're economic slaves, truly. then that would fracture that system. So they have to tell us that that's woo woo, that's pseudoscience, that's a lie. Like they have to tell us that. That's part of how they protect their industry. It's a business model.
It is. It
It's a
is.
business model. And we are unfortunately in so many ways economic slaves to that business model. And it's frustrating. And you talked about entrepreneurship. I think that might have been before we started recording, but I think that this spiritual journey, this awakening to your truth and to your power, this healing your physical body, activating your authenticity, that is the same exact path as successful entrepreneurship. And it's been a really interesting parallel dance for me personally, because to be able to be authentic is to represent what it is that you do. What are your gifts? What's your purpose? Like, what are you here to create and offer the world? And to do that unapologetically and authentically is the same medicine that requires you to heal your physical body.
Amen.
Yeah, I think you feel that. You're going through that.
100%. And
Yeah, I'm still going through it, my friend. And I feel like it would be disingenuous to pretend like I have it all figured out. I don't. A lot of the things I know how to play the game doesn't mean that I always play a perfect game. There's a
sure.
difference.
Yeah, and there's just different layers to it, different levels to it, and I think it goes back to the brutal honesty with ourselves, right? Okay, where am I at? And when I do feel a sense of scarcity, oh, there's a lesson here. What are you open to this lesson? Are you paying attention right now, or do you feel it pulling you back down? Are you getting pulled back into the matrix? And is it weakening you? Is it lowering your frequency? And if you see it and you get to kind of wink at it, like, oh, I see you, I get it, I'm ready. I don't know what the lesson is just yet, but I see this is happening. It's not getting the reaction from me, that visceral reaction that it once did,
Hmm.
that a trigger would. Now it's like I question everything, and I'm ready. I'm open minded, and I remain curious. And each layer I understand a little bit better gives me that much more confidence to deliver my story. Because I think about it this way a lot too. Is the information we learn. There's the dynamic between semantic knowledge and experiential knowledge. And when we can really bridge the gap between the two is when we become a real master of it, a real expert of it. And for me, I want to continue to learn a little more semantically, and whether I'm listening to it or I'm reading it or the combination of the two, but then I have to go apply it. I have to do it. I have to feel it. And I have to see how my situation changes as a result of it. And that'll allow me to determine, did this help my outcome? Did this change the outcome for what I wanted? If so, good. Keep doing more of this, and then add that to your story. Tell people about this too, but
Yeah.
don't be telling them about it because you just heard about it or you just read about it and you pretend to be an expert when you're not. You need to experience it too. And that's this journey is just so powerful. And I even appreciate the vulnerability with you that to say that, I'm not an expert there yet. I don't get it right every single time.
Get it
I don't
right
think
every
any of
time.
us, I don't think any of
Yeah,
us ever
I
will,
don't.
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's embodied wisdom, right? It's like going from knowledge to experience to wisdom.
Yeah.
Then you just become it,
Yes.
right? And you don't even know how you do it anymore. You just do it because you've become it, right? Like that's the repetition of practice that for me, stepping onto my yoga mat tens of thousands of times, and teaching the practice tens of thousands of times has helped support my becoming, right? It has helped support the fact that more often than not, I'm coherent. More often than not, I'm tuned into every subtle. I mean, that's sort of like the like the hard thing that comes with when you become more conscious. You become more conscious of everything, right? So the subtle energy, the subtle shifts are more perceptible. Your vision widens, like your ability to receive and perceive information becomes more sensitive, which is what we want because that's how you get the richness out of life. That's how you see more magic, more beauty. That's how you experience more synchronicities. That's how you create more abundance and higher attainment through practices of manifestation, right? Because you're tuned in. That's how you're more intentional that way. But there's like a little bit of a downside to that because, you're very, at least I am, and what I think most of my friends are in the space that have done this work and that are deeply embodied, you need more silence. Like you can't be around um, a lot of people all the time, pick up a lot of energy. You need more grounding, right? You need more clearing. You need more alone time in order to process and stay connected to that place inside of you that is your authentic self. And once you've tasted it, it's like, ooh, I want that, and I want that all the time. And then you realize that it is required of you to unplug in order to stay connected to that deep place of coherence and peace. Because it makes it a little bit more difficult to, like, your social life changes, you know what I mean? But all for the better. But
100%.
you say no a lot more to a lot of things.
Which means you say yes to yourself more.
Correct.
And that's the distinction I just had recently. I say no to a lot of things now, and I often quote Dr. Will Cole on this too, with his whole premise of JOMO over FOMO. Instead of a fear of
Mm,
missing out, there's a joy of missing out. That
mm-hmm.
resonates so deep with me. When I say no, it's because the thing that people are going to do that they're inviting me to, I appreciate the invite. I appreciate that they care about me enough that they want me there. But if I know that thing isn't going to serve me and it's going to drain me and pull me further away from where I belong on my path, it's an easy no at this point. And they
Yeah.
know
It
I don't do
becomes
it in,
easy now. Yeah.
yeah, the more you practice it, right? Especially they know it isn't a disrespect towards them. They know it isn't that I don't want to be with them. It's just that that thing isn't serving my purpose, and they know that when it's a no. And I mean, it's almost with most of my real close knit friends. There's an open invitation with an expectation that Jeffrey's probably going to say no, and that's
Yeah.
cool. And when he shows up, it's cool, and we have fun. And then I inevitably do the Irish goodbye, and I just make my way out. Especially once everybody's intoxicated, I don't drink anymore, so I remove
No way.
myself from that environment when the time is right, and nobody feels bad because they know it's not
Yeah.
against them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You said something a moment ago that really got me thinking too. Is this awakening, that how much you're there so much more often now, that what it also does for us is it allows us to connect more dots. And we
Yeah.
get right, you're taking the information that you learn semantically, you're seeing it experientially. And again, I'll pull from your conversation with Jack and that specific explanation about the vasopressin and the role melanin plays, and how that actually, when we're moving in the right direction of that, that increases the body's ability to properly detox because we're in a good state of redox. And I was
Mm-hmm.
going for a walk the other day. I got out for about 45 minutes. Beautiful day. I was able to walk with my shirt off, soak in the rays, and then I finished it with some grounding and a little breath work and meditation. And not long after that, I started to notice more of the primary symptoms I get with my diagnosis is blood and clotting and coming out of my urine. And I
Mm-hmm.
view that now, and I have pretty much since day one of my understanding of this, that this is part of the detox pathway. These are things that are in my body that don't belong, that my body's able to release. And it was almost instantaneous. The first time I had to go to the bathroom after that walk, and it was a low intensity walk, it wasn't like I overdid it. I felt this sense of the sun just gave my body the stimulus that it needed to get this stuff out of me and get out of me it did need. And I welcomed it. There wasn't fear of the symptom
Mm,
and, oh, what can I take to get rid of this? I see that
right.
symptom. And I even told my wife about it just this morning. That symptom to me is I have this vision, whether there's a direct correlation or not, this vision of my body taking all this stuff and holding it into this tumor. It's like a highway that had all this garbage thrown, and it's all been thrown into a trash bag. And that trash bag now needs to be removed. I don't
Yeah.
view it as I need to remove that trash bag through surgery. I view it as I need to give my body the right stimulus it needs to know to remove that on its own. And that's slowly happening. And it is something I welcome so much. And this each step along the way, a few days I've had some real severe pain, literally 1 or 2 days, nothing crazy, but each of those days, I said, I'm not taking a pain pill for this. I don't want to mask this. There's another lesson in this symptom. And this is a part of my body that healing. This is the immune system doing its job to take care of the problem that I already created. And it's this step that came through this conscious awakening and no longer being programmed by other people. You mentioned the biology of belief. That's the title of a book by Dr. Bruce Lipton that really resonated deeply with me, and all of his epigenetic work and subconscious programming. That all resonates so deep, and being able to wake ourselves up and do this conscious work is so very powerful.
What do you think that pain was there to teach you? What was the message?
It's a great question. That particular day, it was after 2 days of being home visiting family, and I was doing some things that I would categorize as, if you want to call it right and wrong. Maybe it was a combination of two things that I was out in the sun a lot for 2 days in a row. I was exerting myself in ways that I hadn't in quite some time, doing flips off the diving board. We were in and out of the
Mm-hmm.
pool all day long. My good friend's son is a gymnast, and I used to be, so we were doing some cartwheels and stuff in the grass. And then I had been in a fasted state. And while I don't drink alcohol, I will on occasion have a cannabis beverage. And what occurred to me is I usually go for the seltzers that have zero to very little sugar. That particular day, I wound up having two of them, and they were sodas that had 32
Mm,
grams of sugar each. And I don't consume sugar like that. So I had
yeah.
64 grams of sugar without eating food and then exerting myself that way. And it was about a day and a half lapse before the symptoms really came out. And I think it was my body's response to exerting myself a little bit more than I had been and all that sugar consumption in such a short amount of time. I said, all right, well, there's something here. I need to continue to put, be it thoughts, food, drinks, the energy of people around me. I need to continue to put only good things in and not put these poisons in, put these toxins in. And it was kind of a kick in the pants.
Did it occur to you that maybe the pain was a signal to rest?
Hmm. In the moment, no, not at all. I do see it that way now, very much so. And I don't wait for pain at this point to rest. If I just feel either physically or even emotionally drained, and, God bless my wife from day one when I got the diagnosis and I told her the approach I was going to take, she's 110% on board and supportive. So if I'm not myself, she supports, my kids support, whatever I need to do, everybody supports it. But that's a great point. No, at that point, I did not think about rest as the answer.
Yeah, I think that most times pain is either get the fuck out of here, like you need to remove yourself from this situation, these
Yeah.
people, this environment, whatever, or you need to lay down and rest. Like I really think those are the two pain messages. It's definitely something that you're doing isn't working. Obviously, like that's it, right? But it's like, well, what is it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
for most people, I think we're just pushing, doing way too much. Like in our current 2025, almost 2026, civilization, the amount of activity I think that we do, like we're not meant to do this. Like our ancestors, we didn't do this. We didn't work this much and go this hard all the time for decades on end,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know?
And
I
well,
mean,
interestingly, seasonally speaking, and doing all the work after the sun has set, right?
yeah,
You're 100% right, but I can't help but think like you think about our ancestors, for example, working the land. They had farms. They needed. I have a client that's 86 years old. We were talking about this the other day. Modern families have difficulty having multiple kids because they can't afford it. But you go back just a little bit, the families couldn't afford not to have 8, 9, 10, 11 kids
yeah,
because they needed the kids to work the land. And that's where it was from. They couldn't afford to pay to have it done. So they needed the kids to be able to work the land with them and make it work. So we worked very hard, but it was for about this long each day versus what we're doing now. We're expanding our day into these wee hours of the night, into the early morning under artificial light that is destroying our
terrible.
biology,
Yeah,
right?
it's
And
terrible.
adding the stress. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
spot
I mean,
on.
around here, high school, they changed the rules. I think next year school starts later, but high school starts at 7 a.m. I mean, do you know how bad that is for families? I mean, what time do you have to get up? I mean, these kids, it's bad enough that they're inside all day, that the model of education is so divorced from the way like a young person's body and brain would develop. It's insane. Like we can go down that rabbit hole, but I mean, the fact that they require them to be there at 7 a.m., it's just like that's just one of the fractals in our modern society of like how we're so out of alignment with how much we do when we do it, and I mean, I think that if we could all learn to just rest, like I think I posted something on the Joppa Health Instagram page recently, but like, have you ever just slowed down? Like,
I love it.
but you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're spot
But that
on.
also comes, it also comes if you go down into the root of that, it's not enoughness again.
Yes.
Not enough time, not enough money, right? It's like you got to cram more in.
Yep. Well, and we've also got this whole social media driven world of influencers of the most successful type saying, I got everything I have from working harder than the next person. You're not working hard enough. Get out there
Yeah,
and do more. And that's why I love this space. I mean, there's so many of you, and I guess I can say so many of us in this space that are
yeah,
really successful in our own right. And we're sharing our story. We're being vulnerable. It isn't putting on this facade and pretending, well, I can't tell the truth about who I am because other people might think that's not good enough. So I got to, make it look pretty. I got to use the filter, as you alluded to earlier. And let
yeah,
me take a picture standing next to a better vehicle than I have or a better house than I have. It's like, well, what is success to you first and foremost? Answer that to yourself before you
yeah,
determine whether or not you're successful. And if you aren't, I'm so with you, especially from a health standpoint. If you're not successful, if you're not healthy, it's probably because you need to slow down more. You need to truly
yeah,
rest. You're not getting the sleep you think you are when you're staring at a screen before you go to bed and you're eating before you go to sleep and you're still
yeah,
digesting and not repairing. So, yeah,
yeah,
slow down a little more, shut off a little bit more, and really turn within and find that inner love that you keep talking about. You're so right. I mean, that that's a deep one for me. I don't think I realized it when I was younger, but there was a part of me that was programmed by our society that I got into a little bit of modeling and I really wanted to be able to get that because modeling meant, oh, then I have the external validation. That means other people are telling me I look a certain way that is worthy of,
and your value is associated with that.
that's a fact. And that is the reason I'm so grateful it never really took off because now I see it so differently. I look back, the part of me that wanted to do modeling was like a cover of a book with blank pages. There was no story in there. It's all
Right.
fake, it's all facade. Now, I don't really care what people think about the book cover, but there's a story and I want to tell the story and I get excited to
Yeah,
tell it. And I get excited to tell the parts that are the vulnerable side because that was the side of me that was so programmed that I wasn't enough. I wasn't good enough. I didn't do things right. And I was able to break free of that mold to now recognize, hey, yeah, you are. Hey, that little boy in you that's still there in many ways,
yeah,
you're enough, buddy. I love you.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
and that's,
But it's that ability to speak that kind of affirmation to your own inner child. And, look, this is all over now. When I first started doing this work, literally, there was no Instagram, there was no iPhone when I first started going down this journey for myself. And now I see it everywhere. I see, it's like all these beautifully curated social media accounts that have all these amazing messages. And, maybe that's just my algorithm showing me more of, what I'm putting out. But I do think that there's a lot of information out there about how you can have peace within yourself, how you can heal your nervous system, all this stuff. I just don't think people are doing it. And I think that it's a bit addictive and almost a trauma response in itself to constantly be consuming more information about it. So let this be your invitation, if you're listening to this, to actually start that meditation practice, to actually take that yoga class, to actually do the thing that's going to help connect you to your heart, to actually sit down and write in that journal, to actually face your fears, right? I mean, how many people are actually doing it is really the question. And I was kind of forced to, because I mean, I feel like I was dying. Like there was, and so you don't have to let it get to that point. But unfortunately, like that's often what it takes for most people. I mean, my stepson was suffering from a really severe case of Crohn's disease, but was totally resistant to like changing his diet. You're talking about a teenage boy that played hockey since he was 4 years old and loved his sport and didn't understand why he would have to change his diet and he would have to change his lifestyle when his friends didn't. And I remember the first thing that I said to Tony was, well, when he suffers enough, he'll surrender,
yeah. And
you
there's
know?
power in that too.
Yeah,
There's power in that of us loved ones around observing that in somebody. Having been there yourself, you know that. And you also know when he's ready, if he asks the questions, if there's a way I can help, I'm here. But I can't do it
totally.
for him. I can't want it more than him. And that's the battle I go through, be it loved ones, clients. Here in the clinic, I do massage therapy predominantly, but I've been in the personal training industry, nutrition, all that type of stuff. I have over the years battled with exactly what you're talking about. Like there's this sense of they haven't hit that point yet that they want to do the work, but I wanted it for them. So I would try
Of
harder
course
and
you
harder.
do. Yeah,
And you
you
finally,
care.
yeah, you get to the
Yeah,
point where you realize, okay, I can still care, but I can care under the understanding of I can't do it for you. So I'll take a
you
step
can't.
back. I won't put that pressure on myself, and I'm here when you're ready. But that's that messaging too. I'll ask you a question after I say this statement to kind of give some people, and you just touched upon it. But there's a point at which, if we oversimplify it, and I love you touched on it earlier, it's not easy. Doing this work isn't
No.
easy. And I think that's the problem I have is because I want to sell it in a way that lowers the barrier to entry and gets people to feel like, oh, I can do
Of course.
that. But it does start with the honesty of, yeah, no, listen, if I'm honest, I was ready, which is maybe why it didn't feel as hard for me, whether it was giving up the alcohol, saying no to invitations, all those different things that I've done over the years. So there's a lens through which I see it that says, oh, it's been really, really simple. And
Mm.
I made it easy for myself. And I'm really grateful for that. Although it also started quite a bit later in life than I'd like to admit. So that was part of
Yeah.
it. It took a while, but you
Again,
know,
there's a judgment around like, oh, we should have had it figured out by a certain point. Like, why do we even think that?
yeah,
Why do
good
we think
point.
you have to be rich by a certain point? You have to have all the answers figured out. You have to, conquer all your demons by a certain point. Like, we're all on our own timeline.
That's right. And that's it. Stepping into alignment with your purpose, your path, your timeline. That's the answer, right? So the breath work, the yoga are two things you've already really stressed, and I agree wholeheartedly. But if we said, I mean, if you want to throw a number to it, maybe the top 3 to 5 things, or just the things that'll give the greatest return on investment, where would you tell somebody to start?
Take the job.
Love it.
I mean, because that was born out of not only my experience with my own journey, but serving tens of thousands of people in West Los Angeles who came through the doors of my business and told me their stories and had powerful transformations as a result of working with me and my team. And then also inviting people like Dr. Kelsey Dexter and Dr. Alexis Cowan and Nathan Siles and all these other people into the Joppa Health advisory board to say, okay, what are the right questions to ask for somebody that doesn't know where to look so that we can start to say, well, how are you leaking energy? So I would say step one is take the Joppa Health assessment because we've already put that together for you to help shortcut the process. So you know exactly what to look for because that's a big part of it is where do I even look?
Yes.
Right. And when you have those blind spots and you're new to the process, that can take you a while. You might find the answers on your own, but it could be like me and it was a decade, So that's step one. Uh, Step two, look in the mirror. And I don't mean just like glance in the mirror. I mean like
Hmm.
look in the mirror, go into a room, a bathroom, whatever by yourself and spend some time just staring into your own eyes and really, really see yourself and start to create a sense of intimacy with yourself because we're so far away from ourselves that how can you create that process of healing if you're not actually with yourself, if you don't have your own back, if you don't know who you are, if you're not able to like steadily, it's confronting. Mirror work is confronting. So I would say look in the mirror, take the assessment, look in the mirror. I say this one all the time, so I'm gonna like sort of give this one as like a bonus. So watch the sunrise is gonna be a little bit of a bonus, right? I would say do an elimination diet and not just for food, but for eliminate anything in your life that is making you worse.
Yeah, that's huge. That in specifically saying not just food. I mean, that's you experienced this in your first marriage. There's so many things that people go through and they feel like they have to stay married to their decisions that
Yeah,
they've made. At some point, you have
yeah.
to realize, well, yeah, a previous version of me made a decision that isn't serving me and isn't serving my greater good. I need to be able to move on from that. And boy, that's not easy to do.
No, it's not. And sometimes it does require like really big life decisions. Like if you're working a job that you fucking hate, that's sucking your soul, an environment that's killing you,
Yes.
You might need to like downsize your life. Maybe
Yes.
you can't afford the house that you live in anymore, but you'll be immensely happier and healthier, and that will create the space for you to create even more abundance, right? So it may be that, you have to sacrifice a little bit for some amount of time. Doesn't mean it's forever. It's temporary. Everything is temporary. But yeah, take the Joppa Health assessment, look in the mirror, and then eliminate anything that is sucking your soul.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, though, that could be a very long journey, and it's about whether or not you want it badly enough.
Yep. Yep. And oh yeah, I mean that's you've got me speechless. I don't get speechless very often, but
I don't know.
those are some heavy things.
Full life. I want a full life. I want to be of service. I want abundance. I want nice things. I want safety. I want freedom, and so I'm just relentlessly in pursuit of that. I don't relate well to people who aren't.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
understandable too. And you know what? Maybe in time they'll get there, so you don't
Yeah.
have to put in extra effort to try to get them to wake up and get those things. You just say, all right, well, you're not there. You know what's interesting too? I wonder if you've experienced this idea of raising our own frequency. As that's happened for me, the people who were in my life previously that weren't vibing at that level, I don't see them anymore. I don't experience them. I have experienced multiple. I mean, I know some people hear this terminology and think it's so woo woo and kind of roll their eyes, but I've experienced this. It's been timeline shifts. And
Yeah. Yeah.
this plane of existence that I'm on right now is significantly different than it was even just a few short years ago. Energetically, I feel it. Like the people that are coming into my path now, we instantly click, we resonate. I can tell this is somebody that my soul has been connected with for a very long time. They're supposed to be here. And in the past, I would get another person where it would feel like, man, what is going on here? Why is this person in my path? And it was because I hadn't done that work. I hadn't looked in the mirror. I hadn't removed all these toxins from my mindset, from my, the food is part of it, but it's so much more than food.
It's so much more than that, but I mean, like neuroscience will call it like, inattentional blindness. Inattentional blindness is like when you don't see the things that you're not looking for, they're there, but you just never saw them. So there's that aspect of it, but then there's just the fact that like we are magnetic, we're inherently magnetic. And so when the electromagnetic frequency of the signal that you're sending changes, that's going to attract different people and experiences, different opportunities. This is Joe Dispenza's work all day long,
Yes.
and it's very real. And when you've experienced it, it's undeniable. Like it's totally, totally undeniable. And what's worked for me, and it worked recently as I just acquired this yoga studio and reopened, a yoga studio in the community that was underperforming and rebranded it. And people used to ask me, like, are you going to ever open a yoga studio again? And I'd be like, no, never. I'm never doing that again. And then I suddenly set the intention when I moved here that I want a yoga studio again. I want a community. I want a place where I can practice. I want teachers that I trust to serve up the magic of yoga. And I want to have a sanctuary where we can create content for Joppa Health. And I set the intention on my heart and I believed it as if it was already there. And I had zero doubt. So I think that the ingredient and the thing that is missing in the space of like consciousness and manifestation and spiritual awakening that I've observed is that you can focus on the thing all you want, you can have gratitude for it as if it's already happened all you want, but if there's still doubt in your system, then you won't attract it, because then you're basically sending mixed signals. So once you anchor in a certain belief and you feel grateful for the life that you are living and the life that you are creating as if it's already happened, but there is no doubt about it, then you're going to start to see that life show up.
Yeah. Oh, that's my story from a health perspective. That's for sure.
It's magic, isn't it?
Yes,
It's cool.
100%.
Yeah,
It's
it's cool.
amazing.
And this is, I think the theme of our whole conversation is it's about our attention and what you're paying attention to. And if you're paying attention to how you're feeling and you're paying attention to what you believe is possible, then you can be more purposeful, more intentional about your attention. You shift it, right? So if your attention is always on what could go wrong, what could go wrong, what could go wrong, what could go wrong, what world are you creating for yourself?
That's right.
We spend enough time there. So if you shift your attention to, well, what could go right? I mean, the probability is
Yeah, you
just
just
as
said it.
massive.
I was just on with Dr. Kelly Ritter recently, and that's exactly what I told her. Just within the past couple of weeks, I took on that concept of I became what's on my Instagram profile as the obnoxious optimist because I've
Hmm.
been around so many complainers and I knew I didn't like that. So if I don't like it, I better not do that to other people. So I've just
Yeah.
changed it and I've become as optimistic as possible, and it's just second nature now. So with that in mind, I took that line that you hear people say all the time, man, what else could go wrong? And I've changed it. And I literally say, I said, God, what else can go right? And
Yeah.
it feels like seconds later, I get a call from somebody or something else happens. Like, all right, thank you. What else? Just you
Yeah.
keep ask for it. Your vibration is at that level, and it just comes to you.
So
Yeah,
that's a game of the heart.
yeah,
That is a game of the heart. That game becomes amplified when your heart and your thoughts and your words are all coherent.
yes. Yeah, man, we are living parallel lives, sending parallel messages, and I'm thrilled we have finally connected. This is incredible. And I'll say real quick too. So Dr. Cowan, Dr. Dexter, and Nathan that you talked about with Joppa Health, our worlds are colliding because Dr. Alexis has been on the podcast already. Kelsey's been on already. And I got to meet Kelsey at the retreat, the Return for Nature retreat. I got to meet Nathan there, and we're getting him on at some point soon as well. I'll be back there. Oksana invited me back to next year's retreat as a speaker. So I cannot
Nice.
wait to go for that experience. And hopefully we'll get you there and we'll all be
Yeah,
able to
I'd love to
connect
be
in
there.
person.
I would love to be there. Yeah, I think this community is my favorite. Everybody is so heart-centered. Everybody is so authentic, supportive, and just truly from a genuine place of desire to help humanity is showing up authentically. I mean, there's people in, other sort of nooks and crannies of the wellness community, but I mean, I'm talking about this sort of tribe, this quantum health tribe is a really good-hearted, amazing group of humans that I'm honored to be associated with and have as, friends and part of my team and just quantum entangled with because I feel like the momentum in this space is exactly what humanity needs, especially in the last few years. The last few years have been rough for a lot of people, I mean, just look around. The geopolitical stuff, the financial stuff. I mean, it's been, the post-COVID landscape where there's still a lot of division. It's been rough. And so to have this community come together, that's just like their hearts are on fire for truth and for like
Yes.
literal love is what they stand for. It's a beautiful community. And I hope it continues to grow it. I'm sure it will.
Oh, I'm certain of it. I'm so grateful to be a part of it and to have been welcomed in the way that I have. And, it just started because I stepped into my path, inviting people on the podcast and connecting and then going to the retreat. It's 100% with you. It's a beautiful
So you're
thing,
kind of
really.
new to the like quantum stuff, like
Yeah,
kind
I'd
of ish.
say within the past 2 years, I guess I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Dang.
it's instantly clicking too. I mean, hearing
Yeah.
Alexis talk about it, I was introduced to Alexis on the podcast with Dr. Gabrielle Lyon.
Hmm.
Certainly seen Jack all over and, on the Tetragrammaton podcast numerous times. And yeah, it was one of those things, as they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And there have been
Totally.
so many teachers in this space that have now become peers and friends that it just everything about it just clicks, resonates deep. I've got this intuitive knowing that it is all moving us in the right direction, and we're a part of the paradigm shift. And as you said, the new earth, and there's something beautiful
Hmm.
coming. And it will mean for many people, especially if they have any level of resistance to it, it will mean there's going to be some serious difficult times ahead before things
Yeah.
get better. But if they hear conversations like this and they start to do that inner work and they go to the Japa Health and take the inventory there and look in the mirror and clean up that diet of everything coming in, I'm with you. I think that's a great starting point, and I think that'll have them prepared for the changes that are.
Well, the resistance is real, right? And there's major systems invested in keeping this message away from the collective. So, that That's undeniable, but I think people have experienced enough pain collectively, It's like if you look at the last couple of decades, it hasn't really been great. Fertility's down, life expectancy's down, wealth is down. I mean, people are struggling to make ends meet. It's like, okay, what do we have to change? So I think there's a real thirst for it.
Yeah.
People are sick of it. People are sick of putting their trust in authority systems with terrible results.
And that's where my optimism is rooted because the things you just pointed out are statistics coming to us from the disempowerment paradigm still. And as we, you mentioned journaling before. What I encourage people to do is every time you have a negative thought, journal it, but follow every negative thought up with three things you're grateful for. So you rewire the synapses in your brain to look for things you're grateful for and look for the good things. So when we recognize that, yep, there's a lot of things going on right now, geopolitically, the world over, that are challenges that if that's what you're constantly taking in, that's all you're going to see. But
Yeah.
challenge yourself to do it from a place of love and just start in your own house, your own community, and see all the good and journal that.
Count your blessings.
Yes,
Count
100%.
your blessings, man. I mean, we're all really so blessed. I mean, look, we're sitting here together, we're having this conversation. We have a roof over our head, we have access to food and information and community that supports us. We're not alone. We are so blessed. We are so blessed. And counting our blessings, I think, is something that every religion and spiritual tradition since the beginning of time has taught. But people wake up on autopilot every day, go, 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 go. When was the last time they prayed over a meal or thought about how much it took for that food to make it on their plate? And then to be grateful for every human being and every creature that was a part of that journey. And when you stop and think about just the little things like that, like, wow, like, how did this steak make it on my plate?
Such a great
It's like
point.
so much to be grateful for, but very few people actually do that. So it's something that I had to start to do, and then now has become, I watch the sunrise every day and I count my blessings every single day.
Love it. And it
Yeah.
shows, you know,
Mm,
you resonate. That just pours out of you, and I do. I think plenty of people that, may not have come across your work yet. If we're introducing them here, they're going to jump right on board. And it's
thank
some,
you.
of course, it really, that's why this space is doing what it's doing. That's why it's so successful because this work works. And this work is, we share it with each other because it made us feel better and we want to make other people feel better or not make them. We want to give people the tools that they can implement themselves to make themselves feel better. That's truly what healers do. I've been labeled a healer numerous times from clients over the years, and it's flattering, but I always correct them. I say, I'm a healer in the sense that I'm healing myself and I'm empowering you to heal yourself. I'm not healing you. And that's a massive distinction.
I think being able to see the potential in somebody and being able to hold that vision for them, though, energetically has healing attributes. Doesn't mean we can actually
Yes.
do the work for them,
Yeah.
but especially when people have the trauma of abuse or being ridiculed or not being seen. Like if you've never been seen, if nobody was able to hold space for you before, and you can say, "Hey, I see you.
Yeah.
I see you. I know you. I feel you."
Yeah.
That's
That's
powerful.
spot on. I've heard it put that something to the effect, I'll paraphrase, I won't be able to quote it right, but it is to really change somebody's life, don't show them your superpower, show them theirs.
Yeah.
And that hit me deep too, because everybody I speak with, especially here in the clinic, but anytime I get to talk, the thing that hurts me the most is when I share all this exciting information with somebody and they instantly shoot down why they can't do it. And they're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
so programmed to feel like they're not good enough, they're not enough, or they have too many other things going on. And I want them to
Or
see
well,
what
what
I
will
see
that
in them.
do? Or that won't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's why I brought up like, it's not a quick fix because I think it's the illusion that unless it gives you this dramatic, aggressive, instantaneous result, like people are conditioned to expect from pharmaceuticals or these, aggressive treatments, invasive procedures, then it's just not effective, which that's not true. That's just fundamentally not true. But
Yeah.
they have that, unfortunately, that, programming, that conditioning that, it's subtle and it's soft. And because you can't like measure it, they can't see it. Like you can't see love, you know? I mean, unless you have synesthesia, then maybe a little bit, but I mean, you can't see it in the way that you can see a pill bottle in front of you, you know? And,
Right.
you know, it's not tangible. It's a very intangible thing, but that doesn't mean it's not powerful. In fact, it is the most powerful.
Amen. Yeah, and when you feel it, I mean, you mentioned the heart earlier. We know the energetic field that gets pushed way beyond the limits of the body itself. And then, it's your aura, your field is either going out and helping people, or it's going in and you're this vampire, this leech of
Yeah,
taking from people, right? And when you do awaken yourself, you can pick up on that, both your own energy and other people's energy. You know who to avoid. You can
right.
pray for them from a distance, but I'm not going to let you suck my energy from me. I need it for me and I need it to help others. But hopefully I can get you to waken up to, hey, you're walking around like Eeyore right now, and we need to get you to count your blessings so you can raise your frequency as well. That stuff's so real. I mean, there's,
It's
like you
so
said,
real.
you can't necessarily see it, but boy, you can feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, you really can. And that's what I was saying before is your perception of those energies becomes more heightened and more sensitive the more that you do this work, which is great in many ways. It definitely means that there's going to be a lot of things you say no to, like I said, but you're more able to navigate the subtle energies of life because you can feel it, right? You can feel like when you walk into a space or when you talk to somebody like, that's just not going to work. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just not going to work. And you know, you maybe even can't put your finger on why, but you just feel it and you're like, no, not a match.
Yep. Yep. Too
Yeah,
true.
that's been really interesting for me as a technology founder, like
Mm,
as an entrepreneur in the space, fundraising and working with, you know, venture capitalists and investors, raising money for Japa Health, which is a venture-backed company, and doing it from this more spiritual perspective has been very interesting. Because that whole institution and the mindset that they operate from is very old paradigm.
yeah.
Is a very old paradigm, you know, and it has been a journey for me to remember that what you seek is seeking you, and you can do it differently than what has been like the status quo. And being a contrarian doesn't mean that it will fail. Like everybody will tell you, like, oh, there's this way, there's this path, there's this, you know, step by step method that you have to follow in order to achieve success in a certain industry or, you know, in a certain endeavor. Um, and I don't subscribe to that. I think that we can energetically attract whatever it is that is right for us. And that comes through this subtle art of sensing what is in alignment versus what isn't, rather than just trying to like force your will onto like, okay, I have to raise this money or I have to attract this client or, you know, whatever I have to execute in my business. And I think there's a shift in that direction too, collectively. More and more people are stepping into that way of doing things. And it's so refreshing
Yeah.
that we get to lead with our heart and lead with energy and create in a way that feels like flow and not forced or, you know, like an obligation. So that's the way that I want to live my life. That's the world that it feels better.
Yep. Yep. When it comes to money, as I told you before we hit recording, my subconscious programming, the way I was raised, is we didn't have a lot that wasn't for people like us. And as a little boy, it was like, but that doesn't feel right. What if I provide a service or a product that is worth it? And why would we believe that? So it never quite sat with me, but I've had quite a few opportunities in my career that it just didn't resonate. It didn't feel, I wasn't going to just say yes to it because it meant more dollar signs, and I've delayed it. The level of success that I believe is coming my way, I have delayed it because I need to know when I put my head on the pillow at night, I am in alignment with what it is I'm doing that gets that money to come. And I very much so, from the health perspective, feel this creation from a place of abundance. And I'm feeling the shift on the financial side to be able to provide for my family this financial freedom. But it has to be that. It has to be in alignment with my authenticity and know that, yep, the way we did this, the way it came in, I'll do it again and again. And it
Yeah, yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
just for the money. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
I feel that deeply. I feel that
Yeah.
deeply. Well, that's what we're here to do. And again, that's the same exact path to physical health, right? Because if your spiritual health, if you're compromising your values and your integrity, then you're out of alignment with your soul. And if you do that for money, it will eventually make you sick.
Yes.
You can't do one and not the other.
Right. Oh, this was incredible, Cheryl. I feel like I could talk to you for hours. We'll have to do it again in the future.
Yeah,
And
do it
definitely,
again.
as I already said, I really hope we get to see each other in Tennessee next year at the retreat and maybe sooner.
I hope so too.
So I'll definitely add in all the links that I've got to your sites, your Instagram, and all that. Is there any, the top one or two that you really have, you connect with people the most?
Instagram, of course, my personal Instagram, and then Joppa Health has a page. And then the Big Dharma podcast,
Yeah.
that's
Awesome.
a good place to be. Yeah. I've got Kelsey coming on this weekend, which is
Nice.
nice. Yeah. Excited to do that with her.
I love it. Look forward to
Yeah.
hearing it. Very cool. Well, thank you so
Thank you
much
for
for your
having me.
time. Truly my pleasure. Thank you. And audience, you know the drill. If you haven't already, subscribe, like, comment, share, and be sure to go subscribe to all of Cheryl's and check out the Joppa Health site and take care of yourself. And until next time, be well.